Welcome back to the show. We got a great one lined up. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show. You can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and digperspectives.com for exclusive content. Right now, $2.28 trillion market cap for crypto. The market's off by 2%. 62,500 plus for Bitcoin right now. 2,400 plus for Ethereum. Tether 119 billion plus. USDC 35 billion plus. XRP number 7 spot 52 cents, off 1.4 on the 24, off 15.7 on the 7-day, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we're ranging tightly between 52 and 54 cents. We'll keep an eye on it, sitting smack dab in the middle of 53. Let's get into the news. There's a lot to look at here, and I think you're going to see the shape shift of the world in this video. I really do. Let's get started. All right, let's take a look at this for starters. China officially declares George Soros a global terrorist and says that he is the son of Satan and the most evil person in the world. I didn't realize that I would actually agree with China and Xi here, but I do. And this is spot on. Here's the real problem. And here in the good old USA, Gary Gensler at the SEC has met with him multiple times. Now, why is he meeting with somebody who is equated to Satan by China? Now, why would you suppose that is? Oh, it gets better. If you haven't seen this, this is Alan Greenspan, who used to be the chair of the Fed back in the day. But take a listen.
The United States can pay any debt it has because we can always print money to do that. So there is zero probability of default.
That is the attitude and the arrogance of the Fed right there. And rightfully so, digital asset investor, the GOAT, puts stablecoins. It's exactly right. Because they'll continue to print out of this problem they're in, but they'll continue to introduce new use cases for the dollars and bonds, which are what? We've been over this. Non-banks being issued or being allowed to issue private stable coins. That is a new use case for US dollars and bonds, isn't it? It's also a signal that knowing that BlackRock, PayPal, Ripple, USDC, Paxos, and a whole bunch of others are going to be getting into this game. Visa too, if I didn't mention it. So this is the problem, and it's not over by a long shot. 90-year-old Saudi Arabian Salafic cleric writes that Bitcoin is acceptable under Islam. And let me tell you something else. So is Ripple and the XRP ledger. It meets Sharia law. That is unbelievable. It's amazing news. Then look at this. The IMF recently published a paper exploring potential choices between CBDC faster payment systems and e-money. And obviously stablecoins. I don't need to read the article to you. They're basically going through it. And obviously, the IMF sees that CBDCs are a very reliable way to transfer money. And wink, wink, control the people, right? That's why I don't like them. It's why you don't like them. But it hasn't stopped other countries from moving forward. The Reserve Bank of Australia and Australian Treasury have published a new paper that delves into the potential introduction of their CBDC in Australia. And don't forget, little fun fact here, Dilip Rao, who used to work at Ripple, is helping the country of Australia and their government with the introduction of digital money. Knee bones collected to leg bone, right? That's how they do it. India makes major announcement on US dollar usage. Obviously a BRICS partner, right? They say basically, look, we're not trying to de-dollarize. And we're not a part of that frenzy conversation that you hear. But in fact, we are looking for ways to use our local currencies with our local trading partners. That's basically what they're saying here. India confirmed that they will not actively target the US dollar and it's not a part of their national economic policy. Despite BRICS members cutting ties with the US dollar, India revealed it will settle trade using the US dollar. India has no plans to aggressively push the de-dollarization agenda and will use the U.S. dollar for global trade and transactions. However, they go on to say that the country will passively look for alternative currency options to settle trade with nations that don't accept U.S. dollar. Therefore, India will pay local currencies for BRICS members, Russia, China, among others, and not the U.S. dollar with other nations. The U.S. dollar will be the first mode of payment. So, where they can step off of it, they will, and where they won't, they won't. That's how interwoven the U.S. dollar is. They can't just simply walk away from using it at this point. But this is the moment that the United States has got to get their plan in place. And as of now, we don't even have a fully announced infrastructure, right? Which we know is certainly FedNow domestically. Then looking at this here, we know Bank of Russia eyes extensive introduction of digital ruble from July 25, so just half a year away essentially. This is remarkable because, look, this is another BRICS partner. Let's keep going. Nigeria is going to sell crude oil in local currency, the naira, I believe it is, and ditching the U.S. dollar. Now, this is a smaller country, smaller economy, but this is the fire you don't want to see spreading. Trust me. And here's the real problem. This was back in 23, but I remember covering what had happened. But here's the real problem. Now, this is when they were talking about 2.5 reverse repo weighting. The repo number, which, by the way, repo very quickly in the banking finance world is when the banks can go to the Fed window and say, hey, you know, at the end of the day, we're supposed to have our balance sheet together, but I don't. I need to borrow some temporary funds to cover because at the end of each business day, banks are supposed to be, you know, not underwater on their balance sheet. But that's really the tune of trillions of dollars as of 23 is that was happening on the regular. Then Janet Yellen, as the U.S. Treasurer, was asked about this and asked about in the conversation continually, knowing that China was holding and still does hold an enormous position on U.S. Treasuries, but it's much smaller than it used to be. And that's for the reasons we're talking about. They asked her what is her plan if China were to suddenly dump $859 billion position in U.S. Treasuries due to war. And here is her unfortunate answer.
China and the Taiwan Strait scenario. In our select committee work, we did a tabletop exercise, and in response to sanctions against a Chinese scenario where there would be an invasion of Taiwan, the scenario was that China, the second largest foreign creditor of U.S. Treasuries, would dump that $859 billion in Treasury securities. How are you working with our allies internationally and also the Federal Reserve to deal with a situation where China would dump that volume of Treasury securities overnight?
Listen to this response.
So we are not engaging in specific exercises to address such a risk.
We are not engaging in such exercises of such a risk. Then how do you get to be the U.S. Treasurer? Right? It's literally your job to have contingencies in place for such a thing. And then she just casually, we don't have, I got nothing. Shit, you could have had me go there and do the testimony. I got nothing either. Why can't I do it? Good gracious. BlackRock on the verge of surpassing $23 billion in Bitcoin holdings in IBIT. You know why I'm showing you this after I just showed you that dimwit that's supposed to be our U.S. Treasurer? Because BlackRock understands better than I do where they need to be. And it's Bitcoin. Because they heard her answer too. Yeah, that's why I got some. Then there's the reminder of this whole central bank digital currency business. Thank goodness for people like Tom Emmer, who understands what really is at play if you introduce a central bank digital currency to its citizens, whether it's in the U.S. or some other country. This is all about control. This is all about being able to have control over each citizen and cut their money off, monitor their purchases and spending, and then, yes, eventually do exactly what China has done and introduce a social credit score tied to your money and your life. And understanding the threat of a CBDC and knowing we can't allow a direct issuance to our citizens, and if we allow any kind of CBDC to be issued, even through a private sector, we can't allow them to do what they're doing, weaponizing social media. Imagine them weaponizing not social media and trying to suppress free speech and free press. Oh no, imagine them now launching a CBDC and then controlling all of us. And they won't even matter what they talk about on the news anymore. They can just tell you exactly what they're doing. Because I got control of your digital wallet and ain't a damn thing you can do about it. You know, crypto laws are coming, said Tom Emmer just a few days ago, a week ago. And it was back in August that this came out, that the U.S. Treasury and Federal Reserve, which I remind you, Michael S. Barr, former Ripple advisor, former Treasury official, helped write the Dodd-Frank Act and architected FSOC, which is supposed to step in a moment like this and do something, and it hasn't as of yet. But nonetheless, the Treasury and the Fed are considering reclassifying cryptos as currency under the Bank Secrecy Act. Well, if they do that, then everything would be regulated under the Bank Secrecy Act. And if exchanges don't comply with the Bank Secrecy Act, guess who's getting ready to control all of crypto? The banks. Relevance, power, control. That's what we're talking about here. The banks have been watching for more than a decade what's going on with their customers, taking money out so they can go buy this crypto business. You think that they're going to sit back and just watch their life of their banking system, their business, just go under little by little, year after year? I'm losing it all to the crypto world. Not on your life. In fact, you may see something like this. I have talked about this notion before I even knew about David Andelfato. Years ago, I've been covering this, but this is something that could be quite likely to happen, especially given the current circumstances of today. Take a listen to David Andelfato. By the way, if you don't know, David Andelfato was at the St. Louis Fed for a while during this time.
That is, people say, how can you trust, the Fed to do the bookkeeping? I mean, like I said, my response is, well, you don't expect the Fed to kind of steal your money. I mean, if the Fed can print all the money at once, it's not going to mess around with your bookkeeping.
Yeah, well, I will say to that point, though, all the printing they do is stealing our money. That's what inflation is. It's theft.
So, we have this big spreadsheet, the blockchain, if you want, but it's just managed by the Fed. And it's very cheap, much cheaper than Bitcoin, if you're willing to delegate the responsibility to a third party. But then the downsides to all of that, of course, is you'd actually, suppose you didn't want the Fed to be responsible for processing the payments. I mean, suppose, the Fed will likely impose some KYC restrictions on some purchases. They might not process some purchases that you might want to undertake. And so it was at that point that I said, well, we could, if we wanted to, extend the concept one step further. I'm not saying that this is ever going to happen, but just conceptually, you could imagine not FedWire for all, but kind of like a Fedcoin, where what the Fed would do is actually just issue these, Bitcoin-like objects, but and they would enforce a par exchange rate with the USDollar. That would eliminate the exchange rate volatility. But they could delegate the clearing of these payments to some third party, some sort of Ripple-like protocol or possibly.
Because Ripple has a decentralized exchange with the XRP ledger. That's David Andelfato from the Federal Reserve. He's not a YouTuber, right? Now, this was years ago. But look at the state of where I just walked us through today, whether it's the economy, the state of the debt, the state of other countries holding our debt, or at what stage other countries are in of either pulling away from the dollar, introducing their own payment system, or central bank digital currency. Now, you tell me where we're going. Are we as crazy as David Andelfato from the Fed, or are we watching the entire financial system change right before our eyes? Let's take a quick look at this chart very quickly here. Bitcoin cycle top projection, May 25 to September 25. What's your bet? Here's a sneak preview of the anticipated cycle top based on the 21 EMA and the 55 MA, specifically focused on bullish cross, measuring interval from that cross until all-time high cycle peak. He says here, if you look at this, cycle A is 490 days to reach the cycle peak, and cycle B, 770 days to reach the peak, and cycle C, 896 days to reach the peak. So if we look at this, you can see all the cycles here, right? And then cycle D is unfolding right now. Cycle A's time frame already expired in August 24. That leaves us with cycle B or cycle C as potential guides for the next peak. If we follow those patterns, we're looking at either May 25 or September 25 for the next top. What do you think is May 25 or September 25 more likely to be Bitcoin's cycle top? Cast your predictions. Here it is. This is Bitcoin we're looking at to US dollars. And you could see where this is and where it hits that channel bottom and where we could see going up. I think it's super exciting. And understanding that we could see legislation before Christmas, Tom Emmer has told us, or shortly after the next election if we see a change of the guard. And if that happens, it would probably about the April time frame, which would send the market crazy in May. So it's hard to say what's going to go on, but it's fun to watch. Now, I'll tell you something that's really fun to watch is I have the highlights from the most recent Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk, and I have some of the most critical highlights set up for you to see. And it is absolutely moving. And you're going to want every bit of these highlights because it has to do with every single person that is living in this country specifically, and certainly the world, but certainly inside the United States of America. You're going to want to see every single bit of this. We're going into the Freedom Zone right now. Not financial advice from me or anyone else. You can go to digperspectives.com and you can click the Freedom Zone and come on in. All right.